So we may just start in like the next 30 seconds. All right, let me say special greetings, a special welcome to all of you here, all of you representatives of the media in Dominica, those of you listening via the radio stations in Dominica, and also the various media or social media platforms, wherever you may be listening or viewing from. Today being the 6th of November 2025, it gives me great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to this press conference called by the Electoral Reform Coalition. That is a movement, a grouping of people in Dominica of various groupings and or political affiliations. And so again, it gives me great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you. Just a matter of household protocol, as it were, we would ask that all phones at this time be placed on silent mode so that the proceedings can go a bit smoother as we continue here. In terms of a brief outline as to why we're here this morning, we will be hearing from the leaders of the registered political parties in Dominica in the names of Dr. Thompson Fontaine, that is the leader of the United Workers' Party, Mr. Bernard Ito, the leader of the Dominica Freedom Party, Mr. Joshua Francis, the attorney at law as well, the leader of the United Progressive Party, and also not here but gave his solidarity, Mr. Carlos Charles, the leader of Team Unity Dominica. The reason, or main reason we are here this morning is basically to highlight or bring to the fore certain issues or challenges that are confronting us as a people as it relates to the confirmation process that we as a nation have adopted in terms of it being law from the 19th of March of this year. And so just before I go into some of my opening remarks here, let me just say on behalf of the ERC and the people of the Commonwealth of Dominica, we want to empathize and stand in solidarity with the people of Jamaica and the neighboring communities on the passing of Hurricane Melissa as they continue to reel from the devastating effects of that hurricane. As a country, folks, we have been on this roller coaster ride for some time in terms of trying to make our electoral process a much freer and fairer one. The majority of Dominicans, I must say, we would have wished that we have started from a clean slate in terms of a re-registration effort or a re-registration drive. However, the powers that be and the government got their way, and we now have as law the confirmation process approved and passed in Parliament on the 19th of March 2025. Now that that process has become law, we the people of Dominica, especially those of us who are part and parcel of the opposition, we have taken our time, read the laws, that is, and scrutinized it as well. And like everything in life, there are certain things that needs to be tweaked, needs to be changed, needs to be amended in order that that law that confirmation process that we now have could be better in the interest of free, fair, and transparent general elections as we move forward as a people. Let me here say in a very unequivocal and unambiguous manner and tone that we, the opposition in Dominica, we are in no way, shape, or form not in agreement as it pertains to some of the wording or the principles or the wider framework as to the confirmation process. So we want to set that straight off the bat. We are in general agreement as to the process moving forward. But as I said before, and it must be highlighted, that after reading the laws, there are certain things that we believe that is not in the interest of free, fair, and transparent elections, and so hence the need for the three leaders of the different political parties here today in the flesh, and one absent in the name of Mr. Carlos Charles of the TUD party. We are all in agreement that some things need highlighting, and whereby we as a people can speak to it so that our process can be free, fair, and transparent. So without saying much more, people, I would like to welcome now to the podium none other than Dr. Thompson Fontaine, as he will be dealing with some of the issues as it relates to that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lofty, for this, and thank you for doing the honors for us this morning. A very good morning to my colleagues at the head table, Bernardito, the leader of the Dominica Freedom Party, and Mr. Joshua Francis of the United Progressive Party. Let me also say a very good morning to my fellow Dominicans that are here with us, as well as the assembled press, and everyone who may be listening at home. A few years ago, the government of Dominica embarked on a process of electoral reform that they claim was aimed at primarily cleansing the bloated voters list and ensuring that our election process going forward would be free and fair. After Parliament enacted electoral reform legislation in March of 2025, the Electoral Office moved to spearhead an effort that we all hoped would forever cure the problem of stolen and fraudulent elections in Dominica. The Electoral Commission at first appeared to be reasonably balanced by putting forward a process for confirmation that we all felt could ultimately succeed in ensuring that those who were entitled to confirmation according to the legislation would be allowed to do so. We were, however, stunned and in total disbelief when, on the day before the process was meant to commence, the Electoral Office made a roundabout turn that has now forced the process into disrepute and threatens to prevent any real progress which the legislation was meant to address. The Electoral Office stood not on the side of democracy, not on the side of the people of Dominica, but rather shamefully took sides with a government that is desperate to cling on to power at all costs and is prepared to go at any length to accomplish its delusional goal. Whatever independence the Electoral Office previously portrayed was publicly sacrificed in order to stand with a repressive government that appears determined to once and for all erase our democratic tradition in this country. Let me remind the people of Dominica that the battle for electoral reform has not been without struggle and sacrifice. 25 individuals, including myself, were arrested, with several thrown into a dirty, smelly jail for several days, their liberties stripped, including our very brave women patriots. a young man was brutalized by overly zealous police. That's Mr. Jean-Baptiste Charles. A police force that appears bent on keeping this administration in office, while others were tear-gassed and otherwise denied their right to protest peacefully against a corrupt and delusional regime. Today, those of us who have been arrested have been dragged before the courts like common criminals and at great legal and personal costs, subject to the whims and fancies of a judicial system that one can only hope will protect our best interests. It is against this background, fellow Dominicans, that we come to you today to denounce the recent actions of the electoral office and to demand an immediate fixing of the system in order to get us back on the path to free and democratic elections in Dominica. On October 14, 2025, just one day before the confirmation process was due to begin, the Electoral Commission issued an SRO 39 that called for the use of a government-issued identification to include a passport, a social security card, and a driver's license to be used to confirm the voters' names on the list. What is shocking about this was the removal of the use of a birth certificate as a preferred means of confirmation. The Electoral Office is very well aware that the removal of the use of the birth certificate as a means of confirmation would immediately prevent thousands of Dominicans to confirm their name on the voters' list, thus stripping them of their ability to exercise their fundamental human right in voting for a government of their own choosing. Thousands of Dominican voters are not now in possession of those IDs, and many, because of the same action of this government, which have reduced much of this country to abject poverty, has neither the means nor the motivation to go in search of a passport. This fact is clear based on the work of the Dominican Labour Party in going around the island and offering to pay for passports for their supporters. This in-your-face, naked manipulation of our voting process by the Dominican Labour Party is being supported by an electoral commission that was meant to be independent and free of political influence. The removal, my fellow Dominicans, of the requirement of a birth certificate now means that thousands of potential voters are vowing not to participate in the confirmation process. Most simply do not have the resources nor the desire to get a passport, quote, just to confirm. Let me remind the Electoral Commission that a passport is a travel document required for purposes of travel outside of Dominica, and no one in this country should be forced to obtain a passport for the sole purpose of maintaining their names on the voters' list, by which, by the way, they got in through a birth certificate. Consider this, my fellow Dominicans. An 80-year-old Dominican who migrated to Antigua over 40 years ago and has since given up his Dominican passport can return to Dominica tomorrow and within 10 minutes be confirmed on the voters' list, notwithstanding he's been away for 40 years, notwithstanding that he's no longer in possession of a Dominican passport. On the other hand, a Dominican patriot who has been in Dominica for over 80 years, who have voted in over 10 election cycles, and who have suffered for the past 25 years under the regime of the Dominican Labour Party, will have their name struck off of the voters' list. Why? Because they are not in possession of a passport and simply do not have the means or the motivation to acquire one. How can this obscene mockery of our election and electoral system be justified. Let me remind everyone that this same birth certificate is the very document that is required for registration on the voters list in the first place. In addition, without a birth certificate, you may not be able to acquire a passport or a driver's license. So how it is that the very thing that sets the basis for you acquiring a passport and a driver's license cannot now be used to confirm your name on the voters list. Let me be fundamentally clear, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Dominicans. The decision of the electoral office to do away with the requirement of the birth certificate is therefore neither practical nor reasonable and cannot be justified under any circumstance. In order to restore the integrity of the process and to ensure that the fundamental human rights of the people of Dominica are protected, we demand that the electoral office immediately and without reservation reinstitute the use of the birth certificate for the purpose of confirmation on the voters list. My fellow Dominicans, in addition to the now vexing issue of the process of confirmation, we are also faced with the willful violation by the same electoral office of Section 17, subsection 1 of the Registration of Electors Act 2025 that reads as follows, and I quote, "There shall be the continuous registration of persons qualified under this Act to be registered as electors." Inexplicably, for several months now, the electoral office has prevented actively the registration of new voters in the Commonwealth of Dominica. They have gone further to move registration officers to become enrollment officers and have not replaced them. And they have made absolutely no arrangements for new registration in direct contravention of the laws of Dominica. They are violating the laws of the country. This blatant violation of our country's laws must stop, and it must stop now. This significant violation could even be used as a reason to overturn any future election results in Dominica. My fellow Dominicans, what we are witnessing has nothing to do with elections in Dominica, but rather we are reading from Chapter 2 of the Dominica Labour Party's How to Steal an Election, a plot that has been hatched by the Dominica Labour Party and is now being carried out in full view of the Dominican public by a compromised electoral commission. Let us not fool ourselves. This has nothing to do with ensuring free and fair elections in Dominica, but rather a well-thought-out plan to keep this government in office against the overwhelming wishes of the majority of Dominicans residing here in Dominica. We therefore join forces with the other political parties and patriots of this country in saying no to the plans of the Dominica Labour Party and no to the unprofessional and law-breaking behavior of the Electoral Commission, who no doubt in my mind carry ulterior motives. We are therefore placing the Electoral Commission on notice this morning at this time that they must act, and they must do so now in order to prevent this grave and looming threat to our democracy and to our elections process here in Dominica. I thank you.
All right, thank you very, very much, Dr. Thompson-Fontaine, for some salient points raised here this morning as it pertains to why we are really here especially you, the people of the media, which at the end of two other presentations by the leader of the Freedom Party, Mr. Bernard Ito, and the leader of the United Progressive Party, Mr. Joshua Francis, you guys from the media will be given an opportunity to ask questions relating to what you heard here this morning. Without saying much more, because we have time constraint here, let me move now to Mr. Bernard Ito, the leader of the Freedom Party, for some words.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. And thanks for taking the time off from what I know is always a busy day to be here with us. But these are the things that shape our country, right? These are the things that are important. And we appreciate you recognizing that and being part of the process. The media is really the third arm of governance. And without you, we can't influence minds and influence policy. So thank you very much for being here. And as my colleague, Dr. Fonkin, said, let me also thank and welcome my colleagues from the various parties for being here and for doing what we have to do as a united people, as a united opposition to do the hard work, the existential work that is necessary to maintain our democracy on this island. So thanks. Welcome to my colleagues and welcome to all of you. And of course, all the people following us live on Q and Kyrie and the various reports that will go out to them. So welcome as well to the listening public. Dr. Fontaine covered quite well the issues, the framework of the issues, and especially the issue of the documentation required to get reconfirmed. So in the interest of time, I will not hash on that very much, but I will add a few words, in that regard. What are we doing? I mean, what is it that we are doing in Dominica? What is this, our state about? What is our nation about? What are we trying to accomplish here on this small island? What exactly are we trying to accomplish? I would hope we're trying to build a nation that is respectable, that is solid, that's progressive, that's prosperous. I would hope that we're trying to build a small Dominican civilization that generations down the road can be proud of and say, we did good work in our limited time here on earth to create some place on earth where people who look like us have control of their destiny and did it the right way and created a society that has a quality of life to be admired on the world stage. That is what we should be about. That is what every Dominican should be aspiring to, and especially leadership. That is what we should be trying to create in Dominica. So in the context of that, how is what is happening now making any sense? What exactly is the logic to make it more difficult to simply have your name on a list and have someone point to that name and say, yes, this is me. I was registered a few years ago. It's still me. Here's my documentation. Confirm me. That is what this is all about. It should be a simpler process than getting registered to get on a list. I am 18 and so forth. I'm a resident. I've been living here for 6 months in this district and so on, so on. Several steps necessary to do that. That should be a more stringent process. This should be an administrative procedure so that you can confirm, I am on that list, I have been on that list, I belong on that list. And yet, what is being done now is to make that administrative procedure much more difficult. But that violates something very important in administrative law or administrative protocol, which is called administrative continuity. That basically says, in an administrative process, the original manner by which you got into the system, if you are simply then refreshing and confirming and validating information in the system, that process should not be more difficult than what it took to get on their original. That is a well-known concept of administrative continuity. And this concept concept is being totally violated because a grandma living in Girodale will have a much harder time than she did getting confirmed than she did to get registered. You know, there was a time in Dominica's history when you had to have property, income, and interestingly, you had to be literate to vote. All these were seen as violations of individual civil rights. And as we progressed through time and history and we became wiser as a society and a civilization globally, it was recognized that putting undue restrictions to a citizen's right to vote is a violation of one of their basic civil rights to be involved in the process of governance, to hold their government accountable. And so are we going backward now? That we are now placing restrictions to violate the civil rights of people who were already on a list. It's a matter of civil liberty. It's a matter of a struggle akin to the struggle that Black Americans went through in the 1960s to say, remove the poll tax, remove the testing requirements, remove the wealth requirements. Because a person's ability to vote should not be dependent on the depth of their pocket. Your wealth should not determine how and when you vote. But in this process, that is exactly what we see us reverting to. Because it's costing money, and I'm not talking trivial amounts of money, hundreds of dollars. And if you want to get a new Social Security card and you have a little back on it, maybe thousands of dollars to be issued a new one. Hundreds of dollars for a passport. If you don't have a driver's license, $800 to get trained and to go and take the test. So we're talking significant amount of monies. The wealth, in a very real way, not in a metaphoric way, not in a symbolic way, not in a rhetorical flourish way, the wealth in this difficult economic time And so putting those confirmation centers in areas that are well-known Labour Party offices and so on is inexplicable. And people simply will not comply with that. And it's simply bad administrative practice. Who is governing the process of making those decisions? That's the question. Who makes the decision to put a confirmation center in a Labour Party office? And what are the ramifications of that, and why is that not being addressed? And so we want that addressed. The other issue is, and we have to investigate further, and there's, we're still getting the information on this, but it certainly appears that the people who have been hired to do this confirmation appear to be predominantly Labour Party supporters. And we're asking the question, why is that simply chance? Is it simply a chance that somehow the chief elections officer has interviewed people for these jobs in an open process? But somehow, statistically, it ends up with 90% of those folks being supporters of the government. So that is the kind of questions we want to ask. What is the statistical reality that you end up with that distribution? And why, if not by chance, why? Especially given the fact that the Electoral Commission is supposed to be a bipartisan institution with balance of both government and opposition forces on there. So you would think that in the interest of building a good, fair process, that the electoral office would follow the same principle of having a balanced set of people there to verify and validate that everything is operating as it should. So these are the fundamental issues that we face as a country. Why is it that repeatedly this government tends to erode every institution that is supposed to be placing limits on the government's power to act arbitrarily? Why is every institution being captured by this government to allow it to rule then in an era of chaos and confusion? Because the more chaos and confusion and the lack of transparency that you have is the better it allows a government, a set of people, to do what it is that they wish to do. So that's the context that we're in, and the final thing I'll say about this is we cannot allow that, though, to discourage the people who are opposed to this government to get confirmed. We have to get out there and make sure that our people are confirmed, because if we do not, what is going on now will bake in an advantage to the government for the next decades. And if we are serious about democracy in this country, calling on queue is fine, but let us demonstrate our civic duty and go out there and get confirmed, and we are going to be playing, all of us here at this head table, a leading role in pushing that process and motivating and organizing and galvanizing our people to make change in this country. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ito. You just heard some sentiments, that is, from Mr. Ito, the Dominica Freedom Party leader. As I said before I call on the next speaker, just to reiterate, this press conference is joint, it's one collaborative in nature, and so I know in Dominica, the majority of us has been calling for unity among the forces, and so today is a demonstration of just that right here in terms of the utterances coming from us jointly as to the ways, some of the things that needs to be rectified, amended as it were, as we move forward as a people in our electoral process. That means the way by which we elect governments to serve us. Time is not on our side, so let me now call on the leader of the United Progressive Party, that is Mr. Joshua Francis, a practicing attorney in Dominica. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to Dominica, those who are listening, both here and abroad. Good morning to the media house, and good morning to my colleagues, my brothers, the leaders of the respective political parties who are present here, the leader of the United Workers' Party, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, and the leader of the Dominican Freedom Party, Mr. Bernard Ito. I understand that the leader of Team Unity, Dominica, ought to have been here, but for some reason he's absent in the flesh. Nonetheless, I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge his support for this joint venture here this morning. This morning, we are here in pursuit of saving our democracy and getting social, economic, and political justice in Dominica. We are here because of the hard work of entities and individuals in the opposition family in Dominica. This government has shown resistance to facilitate fair and just electoral processes in Dominica. And had it not been the hard work of the main opposition political party, the United Workers' Party, the Freedom Party must be credited as well, CCM, and persons in their own individual capacities will not have been here today talking about the confirmation process, maybe we would still be choked with the bloated voters list. And on that point, I want us to acknowledge the efforts of all those who showed up for protestations, the last being on March 19th, 2025. I want to say kudos to all the protesters. In the eyes of some, they may be disruptive, but I am confident in the eyes of most Dominicans, they are social and political heroes for standing for democracy and freedom in Dominica. Having said that, I stand here today to lend support to my brothers, both Mr. Ito and Dr. Fountain, as far as championing the cause for a fair electoral process in Dominica. And having said that, several reports have come from confirmation centers in Dominica where persons who went to confirm their names on the voters list were confronted by several issues. And I wish to address mainly 3 of them. It has been brought to my attention that there have been name changes without going through the due process. Meaning that persons who went to the confirmation centers with their valid IDs, whether a valid passport, a valid driver's license, or a valid social security card, would have had a different name to what is on the voters list, whether it is a clerical error, whether it is a spelling error or not, and that changes were being done without due process. The Electoral Commission, in its regulation, has provided prescribed forms to deal with situations of that nature. And therefore, we are appealing to all confirmation officers and the Chief Elections Office that this ought not to be taken casually, in that if someone's name is different to what is on his ID versus what is on the voters list, it may necessitate the intervention of a justice of the peace or an attorney, because person A is and supposed to be person A both on the ID and on the voters list. And therefore, in situations like that, given the nature and the facts surrounding the different names, we are concerned that the confirmation officers allow these voters or these electors to fill in the necessary forms, and where necessary, to get the assistance of an attorney, whether it's for an affidavit of identity or statutory declaration, to make the necessary correction on the voters list. Another issue that has been brought to the fore, more so from a commissioner, is that there is a disparity in the name in the form 31 to what is on the electronic platform. The commissioner asserted that on form 31, the physical form, it calls for current address, whereas that information, when being inserted on the electronic form, meaning that it's been placed on the computer,